Our role model of today is Jennifer Potter. Jennifer, and you lead with your journey with grief after losing your beloved son Maddox in early 2025 after a battle with cancer. And you also lead with your purpose in really honoring his life. By setting up the Maddox Potter Foundation that helps other children facing serious illnesses by providing financial aid and emotional support and access to sports programs because Maddox was a really passionate young golfer. He was very successful, not only as a student, but also as an athlete and a golfer. And you will talk to us about his life now. You'll talk to us about your life. So, Jennifer, welcome to WeCan. Thank you for reaching out and thank you for being with us today. Jennifer, so do you want to talk to us a bit about your journey and that of Maddox?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you for inviting me to be here to talk about my son. It will always be my greatest joy and also my greatest sorrow to talk
Mhm.
about him. But any opportunity I get, I love to take it. Maddox is the oldest of my three boys. So when he was about 15 years old in the late summer, early fall of 2023. He was just entering his freshman season of high school. So he was going into the ninth grade. And like you mentioned, he was a very avid golfer. He had been golfing since he was about 5 years old. So, 10 years into it, by the time he's 15, he had played in a multitude of tournaments. He had traveled for golf, and we had recently just gotten back from a pretty prestigious tournament down in Florida. So he was anticipating a very good start to his high school golf career.
Yeah.
And in September of 2023, about 6 weeks into their season, he came home one day from school complaining of back pain. And that did not really resonate with me as far as being alarming because he was a golfer. So, he's out there, he's doing practice rounds, he is playing on the golf simulator, he is going to the driving range, he's playing with friends, he's playing in matches. So, my husband and I sort of said to him, well, you don't really warm up properly. You don't really stretch, so of course your back hurts. And so that kind of kicked off a series of very basic um, interventions, taking some Advil just to, help with
Yeah.
inflammation. I believe he did a round of steroids. I did actually take him to the emergency room at one point thinking, well, perhaps it's kidney stones.
Mm.
We didn't have any history of that in our family, but perhaps that's what it was. Um, and we were told it's probably viral, it's probably a virus, and so we took him home, and he continued with the conservative therapies. We did some stretching, we did some physical therapy and a chiropractor, just things that you would typically do if your back was bothering you.
Yeah.
And he would get a little bit of relief for a short amount of time, and then the pain would come back. And so it wasn't for several weeks. It wasn't until several weeks later that we realized something is wrong. This has to be
Mm.
more than golf related. But even even at that, I could have probably come up with 15 different scenarios in my mind, and cancer would not have been one of them. I don't
Yeah.
know if that was just arrogance on my part, thinking, oh, it,
Mm.
it it couldn't happen to me. I don't know if that was just sort of a defense mechanism of denial, like surely it can't be something that bad. Maybe it's a slipped disc or something more benign. So at the very end of November of 2023, we finally we his pediatrician said, take him to the emergency room. I'm calling ahead. I want them to do full MRIs, full,
Mm.
cervical, thoracic, lumbar, full MRI. And so we did. And that visit is what kicked off a series of events that has led me here. That's so he had these MRIs. They found a massive tumor in his lumbar spine. He was rushed into emergency surgery, and from there we were transferred to Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and that is where we received the news that he had it's a type of cancer. It's called alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma. So it's a type of sarcoma, but it was stage 4 by the time we found it because,
Mm.
like a lot of sarcomas, this disguised itself as a sports injury. So we
Yeah.
were very delayed in getting a proper diagnosis. But I don't think we're unique in that
No.
regard. I think many pediatric cancers, there is a delay in diagnosis. Even a leukemia, for example, where kids feel just kind of run down and very tired, and they kind of
Mm.
keep what their parents think is some kind of virus. That can take a while to get to the proper diagnosis
Yeah.
because, but before this, I mean, he was a very healthy, active
Mm.
15-year-old. So nobody, you don't take a 15-year-old with back pain to the doctor and they automatically
No.
jump to, well, then let's do full imaging. Perhaps if he had had an accident or some kind of trauma,
Mhm.
yes, that would have warranted it. But you don't just show up with pain. And at that point, he wasn't having neurological symptoms. So it just took us a while to get to the diagnosis. And I think that happens with um, a lot of families. And that's so by the time we got his diagnosis, we all knew we were most likely had passed the point of no return at that
Mhm.
stage.
Mm.
The type of cancer he has is or had is incredibly aggressive. It is notoriously hard to treat. By the time we had his diagnosis, he had maybe a 10 to 15% chance of surviving 5 years. If he did manage to reach remission, his chance of relapse was 70%. So, and you don't really think about those things when you initially get there. The thought is, what can we do? How do I
Yeah.
save my son? What do I need to do? As time goes on, though, and you realize the terrible odds that you're pinned in
Mm.
against, you do wonder and you do question how much is he expected to endure,
Yeah.
knowing that his chances of remission are so slim, but that his chances of relapse are so big.
Mm.
Um, and so then it becomes sort of a little bit of an internal battle of these doctors are the experts. Of course, they treat these children and they devote their life to this to the detriment of their own families. But you no longer just give them carte blanche to do anything. You really have to try and determine like what kind of for what life he has left. What kind of quality will this give? Will this take
Mm.
away more quality than it
Yeah.
adds? And of course, Maddox was 15. He turned 16 about 6 months into his journey. So he had his own thoughts and his own
Yeah.
opinions about what he was willing to endure. I didn't make every single decision on his behalf. He wasn't a baby. He was incredibly smart. We we talked to him very frankly about everything. This is his life, his body, and what he's the one that had to endure
Yeah.
all of the treatments. So I think um, that was something that was a little bit, unique for us is we did get to a point in the treatment where, despite everything we were doing, the cancer spread to his brain. And that is uncommon for his type of cancer. That's very much an outlier situation. And once that happened, I think it sort of solidified for all of us that this was most you know, this was not going to turn out the way that we were hoping and praying
Hoping.
for.
Yeah.
And when we learned that, Maddox, he and I were driving to Cincinnati, We were going there to start full brain and spine radiation to try to battle this new spread. And he and I are driving, and he said, I don't I don't think I'm going to make it out of this. And I said to him, listen, I understand the odds are not in your favor. We'll never stop praying you're the boy that beats them, but you are right that we have a big battle in front of us. And he said, okay, well, if I'm not the boy that beats them, can you please just try to make sure that someone somewhere learns something from me? Um, and that request landed heavy on
Yeah.
on me. And I
Yeah.
said, of course, of course, like I'll do whatever I can. At that point, I had no idea um, how that would look. I mean, we were still very much fighting and hoping and praying. Um, but then in December, about a year into his treatments, it became apparent that nothing was going to stop, that the cancer was just relentless. At this
Mhm.
point, despite, you know, 8 different types of chemotherapy drugs, despite multiple rounds of radiation, you could now see tumors growing on him. Like you could see them through the skin. And um that, we were in Cincinnati, and his doctors kind of sat us down and said, listen, we have tried all of the heavy hitters as far as chemotherapy goes. What they had left to offer was there was more chemotherapy, but it was palliative in
Mhm.
nature.
Mm.
But it still would have required travel, time away from his
Yeah.
home, time away from his brothers, and Maddox looked at me and said, I just want to go home. Just please take me home. And so that's what we did. We brought him home at the end of December of 2024 after a year of treatments, and then we had 23 more days with him. He passed away on the morning of January 24th. But in that time that we had him home, um, we had what a lot of parents would consider probably impossible conversations. And they feel that way. But for us, it felt so necessary. Like, how do you want us to proceed? What do you want us to do moving forward? And that, even down to, how would you like to be memorialized? What are your thoughts? His faith was very important to him, and so I wanted to make sure I honored whatever he wanted. And so we had those conversations, and we had conversations about how to do what he had asked, make sure that someone learned something from him. So it was it, I go back and forth very much about, oh, was I cursed or was I blessed to know that my son was going to die and have to watch it unfold? Um, but also, I was given, you know, a gift. I mean, I know that if this is how the story was going to unfold, I was given a gift of being able to be with him and talk to him and understand how he wanted us to move forward without his physical presence
Yeah.
here. So, yeah, I'm leaning probably after it first happened, I was leaning towards cursed, but I think my mindset has just evolved a little bit. That doesn't mean anything's easier. It doesn't make it any less tragic, and I don't intend to wrap it up. It's not all wrapped up in a neat little bow, and I don't intend to sugarcoat it. It's awful, and it can very easily destroy a family. Um, but he wasn't just ripped from me unexpectedly. Okay,
Yeah.
so and I do think, however, I will say there are demons that come with both. There are demons that haunt parents who've lost a child in that manner, and then there are demons that haunt parents like me who knew it was coming and just had to wait for it. So, but that's the story of how it unfolded with Maddox.
Jennifer, and you are really now in your purpose to make sure that you're honoring his wishes, you're honoring his life. So talk to us about the foundation. Talk to us
Yeah,
about the work you're doing,
sure.
who you are benefiting.
Yes, thank you. So after he passed, a few weeks after, my husband and I sat down and we said, okay, let's try to do what he asked. Let's try to start implementing something for him. And so we created the Maddox Potter Foundation. And we have three goals within that foundation. Um, the first goal is, we want to we want to provide support to families who are facing a pediatric cancer diagnosis, and that financial support, it matters. I hate to sound crass, but money does matter. Um, you know,
Yeah.
once these children are diagnosed, everything that comes, there are expenses that are just astronomical that come with that. From the surgeries, the biopsies, the inpatient stays, PET scans. A PET scan alone here in the United States is, they're going to bill your insurance $30,000 for one scan, and it's never just one scan. So there are multitudes of things that happen before you even get to the diagnosis, and then you have the treatment.
Mm,
And these chemotherapy protocols, there are standards that are set. There's timing that comes with them. If you're like our family, you have to travel to get the necessary treatment. So we had to travel every week, from our home in West Virginia to Cincinnati, which is a 3.5 hour drive. So it's not like it's a
wow.
plane ride. It's manageable,
Mm,
but there are still expenses. There's gas, there's travel, there's
mm,
lodging, there's wear and tear on your car. If you
yeah.
need to find care for your other children while you're
Mm,
gone,
mm,
and all of this is almost always met with a loss of wages because somebody has to be the caregiver, has to go with the child. And, there's only so much PT, paid time off you have. There's only so
yeah.
much vacation. Even Family Medical Leave Act, is only 12 weeks a year. And these treatments are, Maddox's treatment protocol, if it had gone unfolded even the way it was supposed to, it was 10 months,
Mm,
10 months. And so that support is necessary. There are many foundations out there that support families. Um, we are small enough now that we can just our application process is very pretty basic, right?
mm,
Like I remember when Maddox was going through treatment, and I was confronted with different foundations that we could get support from. Some of the applications and some of the things you had to go through just got so convoluted that I sort of said, okay, never mind. Just forget it. So I
I
didn't
can
want to
imagine.
make that, yeah, that kind of robot, but it is necessary to be good stewards of people's money. So you do you do have to use discernment, and there are certain protocols and things like that we go through to make sure we are doing that, being good stewards and giving to families in need. The second thing that we want to do is we want to encourage the growth of junior golf programs. And yes, golf holds a special place in our heart because it was Maddox's sport, but it goes beyond that. When Maddox was diagnosed and we spent our first 10 days at Cincinnati Children's, when when we were being released to come home, in between treatments for that week in between treatment, his doctor said to me, Jennifer, do not take him home and treat him like he's sick.
Mm,
And I was like, now how am I going to do that? That, I mean, everything about this child's life, everything about our life had just changed. And he could no longer go to school. He could no longer um, learn to drive the way we were starting to do. And but the one thing he could keep doing was golf. He could keep getting out on the golf course with his dad or his grandpa or his friends. And we really want to encourage golf as an activity for kids going through treatment because there are many times throughout chemotherapy when you are immunocompromised,
Yeah.
so you cannot be in large groups, you can't play
Mm.
those group sports. There are many times throughout chemotherapy treatment when your platelets, your platelets that help you clot when you're bleeding get extremely low, and it makes it incredibly dangerous to bleed.
Yeah.
You can bleed to death. So you can't play any type of contact sport like basketball or hockey or football, or lacrosse, rugby, any of those, but you can still play golf.
Go.
So it gives these kids a chance to still be out there, still, you know, feel feel like feel athletic, feel competitive, gives them, purpose to get outside, just get fresh air, vitamin D, because it's a sport that you can do, you're walking. You're usually out there with, one or two other people. There's golf carts that you can take if you're feeling especially tired, but it's just a way to stay active. So we want to encourage that too. So if there are any kids out there going through cancer treatment and they want to start golfing as an activity to help get them through treatment, we would love to provide golf clubs for them and to make sure that
Mm.
they have access to a course or a driving range or something nearby where they can get out and do that. And then the third goal we have, and this is the most important for us, is supporting sarcoma research.
Mm.
There is an incredible gap in funding as far as what is needed and what our federal government provides. There are 12 classifications of pediatric cancer. Soft tissue, soft tissue sarcoma is one of them, and that's what Maddox's
Yeah.
um, cancer falls under. Under soft tissue sarcoma, there are 50 subtypes. Okay, 50 unique diseases with different genetic makeups and proteins and whatnot. And that's just within one classification.
Mm.
You spread that across 12, and it's just the amount of money needed is not being met
Yeah.
by the government. I think the National Cancer Institute here in the United States has a budget of, well, I think it's maybe 7.2 billion. That might be for the whole National Institute of Health. And about 8% of that is dedicated to pediatric cancer. So that it ends up being about $570 million, which sounds like a lot, of course. That sounds like a lot of money. But I did a little bit of research and looked. A couple of the large colleges or large universities here in the United States, two of the biggest ones, each spent about $270 million just on their athletics department in this past year. And I thought, my gosh, two athletic programs at two colleges could eat up the whole pediatric cancer
Yeah.
research budget in this country. And so, it is, it's terrible that a responsibility like that would fall on a foundation, on a private foundation, on family foundations. It is too bad that happens. However, that's just the reality.
Yeah.
This is where we are, and so this is the work that we have to do because there are many researchers now that over the past year, they haven't even applied for grants from the federal government because they feel like it's a waste of time. And that's devastating because, sarcomas in particular have there have not been significant advances in decades. I
Mm.
mean, Maddox's type of treatment was, I think, developed in the 90s. I mean, you're talking 3 decades. There have been no vast improvements in outcomes, no vast improvements in any type of um, treatment options. And so it's time to really focus on that. And researchers are realizing that. They're realizing that other cancers like leukemias um, have made great strides, but sarcomas have not.
Happened.
And so that's a huge focus for us. Absolutely.
Jennifer, I'm so unbelievably touched by this because I think And proud of you because childhood cancers are on the rise, and we know that. I mean, cancer is on the rise. Childhood cancer is really on the rise. We know that the government in America right now has axed most funding programs for research, which is really impacting all the cancers, all the illnesses, and mostly sarcoma, which is really underfunded and under-researched. And cancer is not going to stop, and more people will die. So I feel with you, and I'm proud of you to turn this thing that happened to you, this terrible thing that happened to you, into something where you really are trying to change a system that isn't serving society. Jennifer, so we will put the link into for people to give. How else can people get involved?
So, like you said, we do have our website where people can give. And I want to just make a quick point about I know that foundations and we do the same. We'll hold golf tournaments and foundations will hold galas and big events and those events bring in um large amounts of money, right? And they really can help catapult you to your goals. But I never want anyone to think that even if they can just spare, two, three, four, $5, that is it can make such a massive difference. Here in West Virginia, in our state alone, I think we're a smaller state, so we have about 1.2 million people.
Hmm.
If 20,000 people in this state decided to give $5 a month, for example, to our foundation. That's $60 a year. Okay. If 20,000 people did that, that would be $1 million. Okay. A little over $1 million in 1 year. And that's with 1% of our population
Hmm.
giving $5 a month. So I cannot stress enough the importance of widespread support, even if it's just a few dollars. I never want people to feel like if they can't buy a $120 gala ticket or pay, several $100s to play in a golf tournament, that they can't make a difference because they can.
Yeah.
It is incredibly important just to have those consistent donors that believe in your mission. And again, $5 a month, like it can make such a huge difference. We also have, so yes, you can donate at our website. We also have a little initiative that we've just started. We're giving caregiver kits. We're coming up on the holiday season here, and there are so many beautiful charities that do and organizations that do toy drives for the kids who spend Christmas in the hospital. It's a beautiful thing, and it really makes it helps so much with the spirit of Christmas and the holidays for these kids. But our foundation wanted to do something a little different. Um, we created caregiver packages because, I've been a caregiver. I've been one of the ones that sits by the bed um, and you don't know what you don't know until you're in that position. When Maddox was first admitted to the hospital, I was under the impression it would maybe be one overnight. It turned into 10. I had one outfit change with me. I had my contacts, and some face wash, and that's it. And so we want to provide kits for the mothers and the fathers and the grandparents, the loved ones, whomever is sitting there with that child. We want to provide them with basic necessities, laundry detergent, notebooks to take notes in, pill organizers for when they go home. There's so much medication to keep track of. There's
Mm.
so many appointments to keep track of. Just some comforting things that we think they can use while they're at the hospital and then even beyond. So we're trying to focus a bit on how to take care of the caregivers. It's such an emotionally challenging time. And if your kid is newly diagnosed, it's basically like taking a medical terminology class. You are learning
Mm.
so many new things, and trying to figure out the logistics. You're watching for side effects. There's so much to learn and keep track of that. Um, you do forget about yourself. You do forget how to take care of yourself. So we're
Yeah.
trying to maybe fill that gap there. And then, of course, going into 2026, we do have um, some golf tournaments planned. Of course, one golf tournament will be mostly for adults. It's hopefully the one that brings in a good amount of money for us. We're doing a gala as well, and then we also have a little junior tournament because, again, we love to get as many kids out on the golf course as possible, and we're trying very hard to connect youth golf with this purpose and this cause and with philanthropy because we do feel very strongly that if you can capture these kids while they're young, um, who knows? It may influence a career choice that they might make. They may end up dedicating their career to pediatric cancer in some capacity. And if not, it may just be a cause that they carry with them, philanthropically through their life, something that's always dear to them and something they always support. So we're trying very hard to get youth involved as well.
Which I love, Jennifer, and I would
Thank
love
you.
to encourage any young person out there listening that might be a golfer. Everyone can start a golf tournament for the Maddox Potter Foundation.
Yeah.
Young people, older people, families, anyone who feels called to do this is an amazing way to raise money and support you and Maddox in this foundation. Jennifer, how do you manage through all of this? And I would love to get some tips on this caregiving, because I have a very close friend who is going through a journey with her 15-year-old who has
Mm.
leukemia, and it's the hardest thing to know how we can help our friends when they go through something like that. So, do you want to give us some advice or sort of your learnings on how people were best supporting you and also how they can best support you now?
Right, right. So, when Maddox first got sick and it sort of became public not or our friends and like his teammates, his classmates at school and kind of the community found out, we had such a big influx of people who wanted to help us. Um, and at that, people would text me directly and, what can I do? How can I help? And um, my first thought in my mind was, if you can build me a time machine and take me back to before he was sick, that's all I want. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted. Um, was just to go back. You very much. Well, I'll speak for myself. I can't speak for everybody else, but there is very much a period of disbelief when your
Mm,
child is first diagnosed. Even a little period of I don't want to say I don't want to be dramatic and say like disassociation, but you kind of look at it like, is this really happening?
mm,
Am I watching somebody else? Is this genuinely happening to him, to
mm,
my child, to me, to my family? So it took me a long time to understand what could be helpful. In our case, we were gone for treatment. So
yes.
anything that people could do to help care for our other two children, taking them to school, picking them up from school, taking them to their activities, so much about their lives was upended as well. I know they weren't the ones receiving treatment, but all of a sudden their brother's gone, their mother's gone, their dad is gone. Um,
Mm,
Everybody's sort of in a state, everything changed. And so, as much consistency as they can have, because they were scared too. It's not like it was
of
just
course.
me and my husband scared. Like they were
Mm,
scared as well. So anything you can do to help the other family members and very basic things, like things I would have never thought of. People just dropping off groceries to our doorstep, toiletries, a month's worth of paper towels and toilet paper and just things like that because it is incredibly overwhelming and you sort of sit there and you think, how does the world keep turning when this is what I'm doing? And the reality is that the bills still need paid on time. Everybody still needs dinner. Your other kids still need They need taken to their activities. They have to go to school. So I think that our community did such an outstanding job of just saying, we'll do it. They didn't wait for our directive. Like, we just had friends that created meal plans, that created donation drives, people that just showed up at our door with things for us. And so I think that's one of the most important things that can be done for a family in that regard. Um, but I do know that nobody got a great response out of me when asking me what can they do, because I was so focused
Overwhelmed.
on Matt. Yes, so overwhelmed
Mm.
and so focused on Maddox that I couldn't come up with a good response, and they just took it upon themselves to do it. So I think that just it doesn't have to be a huge grand gesture, but those very basic things, drop off toiletries to them,
Mm.
drop off a meal, a gift card, um, anything like that. Create a grocery delivery service for them weekly. Anything like that is incredibly helpful. It's just having those very basic um, responsibilities that you almost no longer even think about or have the energy for. Having those taken off your plate is huge.
Thank you for that, Jennifer. I will
Sure.
take that right on board and
Yes.
go for it. Jennifer, and how can people best support you now?
Oh,
You're
yeah.
not even a year in, and I'm
Well,
sure many truths are true at the same time, when you grieve, and sometimes you're overwhelmed by gratitude of having had him, and sometimes you're overwhelmed with grief of him being gone. And
yeah.
how do you navigate this journey, and how do you ask for help?
Well, like I spoke to earlier, I couldn't decide if I was blessed or cursed by having,
Mm.
having this child here in a hospice bed in my bedroom, laying beside me and knowing what was to come. And I was, like I said earlier, I was given time, but when he actually passed, I was still wildly unprepared for for that. I was wildly unprepared for how I was supposed to meaningfully move on through life.
Mm.
Um, I was not prepared for the immense sense of emptiness. Grief is different than sadness. It is. It's very much, those are two incredibly different emotions. Um, and so, grief, losing Maddox, even though I knew it was going to happen, it was still so disorienting to me as a mother, to our family, to our household. I have two other boys. We have two dogs. We have a loud, rambunctious house, and it felt empty, empty when losing him. And that was something that I just could not grasp.
Mm.
I still have, I still walk into his room every day and I just genuinely cannot believe he's gone. And I know there are those stages of grief that
Yeah.
people talk about. Um, and I think that the disbelief will probably always be there that I had this boy for 16 years and then he was gone. Um, I also think for me, like the that acceptance stage that people talk about, for me, I see it more as not an acceptance of, okay, this is what happened and now I've somehow made peace with it. No. To me, the acceptance is, this will always be hard, Jennifer. This will never ever get easier. You have to accept that. You also have to accept that you have two other little boys that are watching you very closely. I know they don't expect me to be a superhero. We don't pretend um, that what happened to Maddox wasn't terrible. We all cry. They see me cry. Everybody sees the grief come out in different ways. But it's also very important to me that, God willing, 10, 20, 30 years down the road in their lives, when they have their own families or when they're looking back on this time and they think, yes, I lost my brother. I don't ever want them to think, but I lost my mom too.
Mm.
I lost her too. Did they lose the mother that I was? Yes, because whomever I was before Maddox died, died with him. And that I think is just, I think that probably holds true for every mother that's lost a child.
Yeah.
Whoever you were before is gone. Um, and so you try to rebuild, and it's a great question from you because, you know, I knew very well, who I was before. Um, I don't so much now. I don't know you know, what are my hobbies, what are my interests, because everything just changed,
Mm.
when he died. But, I know I'm still these two little boys' mother, and I'm also still doing something that Maddox asked me to do.
Mm.
Nobody is going to learn anything from me or him if I'm in the bed all day,
Yeah.
So you get up and you go. And I very much believe, I mean, his little spirit is always with me. He didn't want to lay in the bed and cry all day, Let's go. Let's get up. Let's go do things. So that's what drives me. So I think now our community has done a phenomenal job of shifting from they supported us, our family, while Maddox was sick, while he was on hospice. And then the minute we created the foundation, they shifted with us because they know that that's our way of turning loss into action,
Mm.
turning pain into purpose.
Yeah.
Um, so they've just kind of moved right along with us, and it's been beautiful to see. And he was a very loved little boy, and he knew that. And I think that's one of the things that does, it does kind of propel you. Life just has a way of doing that, right? Forcing you to put one foot in front of the other, whether you want to or not. um but I know that Maddox, he would never want me to abandon his little brothers.
Mm.
That's not what he wants. And before he died, I promised him, I said, we'll be okay. We will figure this out. And I meant it. I didn't say it'd be easy, but I meant it. We'd figure it out.
Yeah. And you're keeping his spirit alive, and his spirit was really strong, Jennifer. And I love that quote on your website. It's not the strength of the body, but the strength of the spirit. And that's a Tolkien quote. And I think that, is the thing that maybe the body isn't here anymore, but his spirit is.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. He, his and he the way his little spirit and his faith and his wisdom affected people. It just kind of eclipsed eclipsed that of even adults, just to
Mm.
be that accepting and say, listen, I want to go home. Please just take me, home, like back to where he's loved. And, he has friends and brothers and teammates and a community that loved him dearly.
Yeah.
He just, that's what he wanted at the end. And
Mm.
um, so he actually gave us a huge gift because as awful as it was, how much more devastating would it have been if he had been begging me to find something to help
Yeah.
him, something, someone, take him
Yeah.
somewhere. And I would have had to say, I
There's
can't, there is
nothing.
nothing. Yeah. And so he left us a huge gift. And I think, he he expects good things out of us, and I'm going to do what I can for him. But yes, his little spirit is still very much alive and well in our house, and it always will be. We talk about him, we talk to him every day. Well, and that'll never change.
Jennifer, so what takeaways do you want our listeners to have from your story and Maddox's story?
I want everyone to understand, and this became very apparent to us, when Maddox got sick. It is so easy to have faith when everything is going your way. Okay. It's so easy to be grateful when your bills are paid, when you're loved, when you're winning golf tournaments, when your grades are good. It's when everything's going well, it's so easy to have that faith. Um, it's when the rug is yanked out from under you
Mm.
that you just truly have to dig your heels in and still be grateful for this life. You can't let that um, shake your faith. It doesn't mean you can't be scared. It doesn't mean you can't be, worried about what is to come. Those are normal human emotions. But Maddox did such an extraordinary job of staying steadfast in his faith. And I think that is the biggest gift that he could have given to us. It doesn't mean like I said, doesn't mean he wasn't afraid, but that faith is what led him to that ultimate place of peace
Yeah.
with it, enough peace to say to me, just take me home.
Mm.
Okay? It's okay. Like we can just go home now. And without that faith, this journey would have been so much more treacherous than it was. And so I am very proud of that boy for um, showing us what it means to genuinely be faithful, to genuinely be accepting of a story that is not at all what you would have written. But, you know, sometimes you have to let it be. And he
Yeah.
did a very good job of
Yeah.
that. So I think that would be my advice is, you know, um, sometimes you have to let it be, even though you don't want to, even though you might not understand. I think um, to other parents out there, I know we all, when we have sick children, why is this happening? Why does this happen to any child? You can get yourself in a very dark and uncomfortable place very quickly, um, asking those questions because there are no good answers. And I think
Mm.
that's just the bottom line. There are some things in this life and on this earth that we are just not meant to understand. And so, I think that too comes with the acceptance of my life will always be hard. I will always have this cross to bear. I'll always be a bereaved mother. Um, and I'm probably not meant to understand it, you know, but I still continue on because, what my boy had to go through is so much harder than what I'm having to endure.
Jennifer, I'm so grateful for you, and I'm so grateful
You.
for your story and your experiences because they really help others. They help other moms who have lost a child or are losing a child. It's helpful for caregivers. It's helpful for friends of caregivers. And so I would love to leave people with this that they have to look up the Maddox Potter Foundation. You can give money. Nothing is too small. A
Mm.
pound, a dollar, a $5 a month makes a huge difference. Get all your friends and family to do the same, or do a sports tournament in Maddox's name to raise money. You can cycle for him, you can run for him, you can walk for him, you can golf for him, all of this money to help other families who are in similar situations and for sarcoma research, which is really important. A lot of funding has been cut, and it's really paramount that each one of us thinks how we can support families who have to go through what you're going through and what you went through, Jennifer. And is there anything else how people can support you that we can leave people with?
I think that was a beautiful way to sum it up for everybody. It doesn't just have to be golf, cycling, running, walking, rowing, anything you can do
Mm.
because I'll tell you what, these children going through research or I'm sorry, going through cancer treatment and or going through, clinical trials from research, they would give anything to be able
To
to
do that.
run. Yes, to walk, to row, to bike, to go. They would give anything. Watching a child lose um, the ability to be a child
Mm.
is it's devastating. And so, when you do it, um, just think about that. There are so many children in this world right now um, that can't do those things.
Yes.
And so that was a beautiful point to make. Any type of physical activity you can do on their behalf is a wonderful tribute to them. And if you
And
can raise money for research and in the process, then that is beautiful too, because we need these researchers to continue chipping away at the science, and they
yeah.
do. And we've seen what can happen in other cancers when there is dedicated
Mm.
money and research, that we've seen, what immunotherapy has been able to do in certain
Yeah.
types of cancer. So, it's out there. The answer is out there for a lot of these cancers, but it takes time, it takes resources. So anything you can do to contribute is a wonderful way to honor these kids and their fight.
And actually also schools can really help. They always do little fundraisers within schools. So this is really something that schools
That,
can also get involved with. And Jennifer, thank you so much. I
thank
will keep you
you.
in my heart and my prayers.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. We appreciate you.